Welcome back to Breakfast, 6:31. This is Breakfast on GB News with Olivia and Martin. And if you're just joining us, here's a reminder of our top stories this morning.
The Chancellor is weighing up a national insurance tax cut in an effort to woo voters as the election draws closer and Labour continues to dominate in the polls.
I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. Set for a dramatic launch. That was terrible, sorry. With GB News star Nigel Farage in the spotlight. We'll be live down under throughout the programme.
And a Tory MP is calling on the government to honour its 2019 pledge to ban the import of hunting trophies. It'll mean a fight with the House of Lords. We'll have a special report on that a bit later on.
And plans are revealed to test drones to show up to emergencies to give police extra information. But how would you feel about police drones roaming the skies above your neighbourhood?
Parents should know what schools are teaching their kids about so-called toxic masculinity, say a group of MPs who've released a report saying the lessons could lead to male pupils feeling picked on.
And the government is spending £1.5 million on minibuses and electric vehicles for the prison system in Albania. Yes, this is part of the government's plan to help modernise the Albanian prison system, and it's part of a deal to return foreign prisoners. Let us know what you think about that or anything else we're talking about this morning by emailing us the usual way, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Well, joining us to go through some of the day's headlines is author and journalist Suzanne Holder and showbiz reporter and broadcaster Stephanie Tecci.
Right, let's kick off, Steph. There's only one place, you, Mrs. Showbiz.
Yeah,
I'm a celebrity.
I'm a celebrity.
I reckon it's going to be a corker.
I think it's going to be quite a controversial series. It's going to be entertaining, and I think it's going to be all eyes on Nigel Farage. It's going to be about how he gets on with other campmates as well. And I think there potentially is room for sparks to fly between him and Grace Stent, the food critic. And some tweets have been unveiled that she said in the past where she was mocking the plane crash, which Nigel nearly lost his life in. She was making fun and saying that, you know, I hope who he was saved by weren't pesky immigrants. And I think that's quite distasteful because whether you love Nigel or not, he's still a human being. But I think ITV bosses are going to love this kind of drama. That's why they've picked people who are either A, against Brexit, or people who do not agree with that kind of rhetoric that Nigel has put out there for many years. So I think there is going to be a lot of sparks that are going to fly. Today, Nigel has been exempt from some of the Bush Tucker trials because of the crash, because he's had to have reconstruction on his neck. So he's not going to be skydiving out of the plane today, but he will be in a desert 2,000 miles away. So he will be restricted on what he can do during the series.
Yeah, you wouldn't ask Nigel Farage to jump out of a plane into the I'm a Celebrity jungle, would you, after what he went through with that terrible... I mean, I remember those images, actually, of him being pulled out of the wreckage of that. And you forget, it was quite a long time ago now, wasn't it? Probably over 10 years. But yeah, for her, obviously, they've gone through her tweets, Grace Dent, and picked up these things. But there's other things that she said that she called the show, because she's obviously a reporter and she's quite outspoken and she said things in the press before. But she called the whole programme puerile a few years ago and said that when she watches it, and she did say she watched it, but she said when she watched it, she closed her curtains because she felt the theme tune alone would devalue her property. So I just think that's a bit unwise to go in there when the producers can kind of make you do all sorts of things. I wouldn't like to be Grace Dent in that situation.
The problem with being a journalist, isn't it? You write everything down and it gets thrown back in your face.
And all the horrible tasks will be coming her way.
No, it goes to show always for the right paycheck, people will turn
you just make you wonder.
And they will sign up.
Absolutely. I
to be fair, 1.5 million, I would definitely throw all my morals out of the window.
I don't believe any of those figures that are kind of in there. They always kind of add a lot of noughts to things in the paper. And Grace Dent won't be on anything like that. But clearly she did have a price, and I do wonder what that... I'm more interested to know what that price is.
Well, it's probably hurting her. It'd be a lot less than Nigel's price. Anyway, I think it's going to be great. The betting, it's 6-1 for Nigel to win. He's now fourth favourite. I think a cheeky cheeky little bet is him to finish in the top two at 5-2. And as I said earlier, if it's down to Nigel in the final two, it's going to be a second Brexit vote. And it's just going to get everybody...
Let's not go there. Can we not go there?
It'll end up 48-52, won't it?
Right, talking about paychecks and how much are you for sale, Suze, let's talk about a tax cut, because it's the election's coming.
Yes.
All of a sudden, down the back of the sofa, here's a flipping great wad of cash,
Well,
and they're trying to offer a tax breaks. What's the latest on this?
Well, some people will be hoping that's the case, but of course we don't actually know. What the papers are full of today is lots of speculation. So I can read you some speculation, but I can't necessarily promise you any tax cuts. But what we have got is that they are thinking of making tax cuts for low and middle earners. They're also considering the inheritance tax cut or getting rid of it altogether. But again, it's all speculation. You've got everything from they're not going to do it at all to it's going to go completely and be absolutely abolished. And we don't actually know. What we do know is that they think that Jeremy Hunt's got a bit more headroom. They're saying he's got about his headroom has grown to 25 billion before any spending measures are factored in. And also, how are they going to do all this? It's not really explained, but there is a worrying statement about, well, they might squeeze welfare payments and make cuts elsewhere. So all of that is a bit worrying. But to be quite honest, we don't know.
No.
What I'm fascinated by, and which they don't seem to be talking about at all, is these stealth tax cuts. Obviously, inflation has been rising massively, and yet the threshold at which people start paying the 40% rate of income tax hasn't changed since, I think, 2010.
That's right.
Which means that in 4 years' time, 8 million people in the UK, including teachers and nurses, etc., will be paying that higher rate of tax, which is meant for sort of rich people. Now, how is that fair? People should be so angry about this, but they don't know it's happening because that's the definition of a stealth tax.
People are angry, and I think, to be honest, there's always going to be losers in this. Like, for the government, they can't appease everybody, but they need to start thinking about the everyday man, who cannot afford to pay their bills and their mortgage. And it feels like these people have gone amiss when it comes to the government introducing these budgets. But I'm more concerned, if they do cuts to welfare, how are these people going to survive as well?
Well, I think, as I understand it, and take that with a pinch of salt, as I understand it, it's because inflation has gone down, so the amount they've allocated for benefits payments is effectively less. So it's like money they had, they were going to pay out on benefits, which now they have to pay less because it's inflation linked.
You've lost me already.
Which means they're not actually cutting benefits. They're just not giving.
And it's the same with pensions too. They'll link it to a different price.
I think that's it. Now, if anybody out there has a superior economic brain, that's almost everyone.
It's all robbing Peter to play Paul, isn't it? That's what it is, basically.
There's no real money.
And similarly, I mean, there's another story on our list to do, which is actually linked, which is the fact that nearly £100 billion worth of taxpayers' cash has gone down the drain in what they're saying is wasted money. Things like 140 million thrown away on the Rwanda migrants deal, and there's £500 million blown on post-Brexit customs inspection sites that were never used, and £2 billion, of course, on HS2, which was scrapped. Now, I agreed with the scrapping of HS2 because I do think you can throw, good money after bad if you're not careful. But there's all that. So there is there's money there. It's how we're using it and how it's being spent, isn't it?
Very, very bad timing, I think, for the government that the Rwanda plan has been deemed illegal in the Supreme Court last week, because, of course, we're all talking about the money that's been wasted on that plan. The government has sent more journalists to Rwanda than it's sent migrants.
They've sent more Home Secretaries. They have sent more Home Secretaries than deportees. And, Steph, this neatly brings us on to your next story. A scoop on the front of the Express. Something a great many people in GBNEWS land will be concerned about. We don't know who's coming into the country via small dinghies, and now there's a terrorism alert.
Yeah, and this is the problem with, Rishi and co being so obsessed with this Rwanda plan, is they're not actually focused on what's happening on our own shores. So the Express is saying that a manhunt is under the way after 6 suspected terrorists have crossed the Channel into Britain. They all have links to Islamist groups, and Security Service know where 3 of them are. They're monitoring them, but the other 3 have lost into the system. They're saying they've allowed these other 3 to roam in the country because they want to see if they've got other links to terrorist cells. And in total, there's about 25 terrorist suspects who've managed to cross into the country. And to me, that is 25
that we know about,
many.
yeah.
Right, that's what we know
to be
about.
honest, I don't feel comfortable knowing that they've let these 3 suspects to go mingle in the country with other people, because for all you know, they could be planning a terror attack. And when it happens, that's where we hear that line in the news where they'll be like, security services were watching them, but it's a little too late.
But then again, if they lead them to other people and you need a wider, to get kind of make the net wider, I suppose that, I mean, that is what we, you know, trust the security services hopefully to do. What I thought was quite interesting was in the Sunday Express, there's a resident called Kim Rye from Kent who's been filming small boat arrivals for 2 years to create a public record, and she fears there's a major threat of terrorists because she's saying that groups of men are landing and then just simply getting into waiting vehicles. And she said 2 years ago people were arrested and always searched, but one recent group of 30, none were searched. And she's just watching that happen.
Kim actually supplied some of that footage to GB News. I know Kim, and she's got footage of lads coming ashore in dinghies and literally charging ashore, going into people's houses, trying to find mobile phones or anything. And no one is talking about this, and they are literally living on the front line.
It just
must be terrifying even in Kent. Yeah, we don't appreciate it.
Living there must be an absolute nightmare. And like she's saying, you know, it's all young men alone. It's not families. It's not.
And yet, if you talk about it, you know, you're racist, you're alarmist. But the fact
is alarming. It's very alarming.
It is alarming. The fact of the matter is, if we have a situation, which we have, where young men can rock up without documentation, without any proof of who they are, it stands to reason. OK, not all of them are terrorists, obviously, but not all of them are brain surgeons either. Some of them may be terrorists. That's a fact.
It's true, Martin. And this is why I'm concerned why Rishi is so fixated on Rwanda, because I'm like, we already have migrants who are here, which they're already roaming about in the country. Some of them, they do have sad stories behind why they've come here, but others, there are potential for terrorism, and it feels like they are just being lost in the system, and they can potentially get away with doing an attack in the future.
The average time to process one of these asylum claims is 435 days.
Wow.
No, it isn't.
A year.
No, it isn't. I don't believe that. Of course that isn't true. That's just ridiculous.
It's terrifying.
It's just stupid behaviour by people who should be doing their jobs properly. And that's where the core of the problem is that the people weren't processed in the first place. But I heard you talking earlier about the Albanian prison thing. But actually, I'm not upset about that, because if that's part of the deal we're doing with Albania to return people, and we do have to invest something in their prison system, yes, we do need it in our prison system as well. But I do actually get the argument that that is something that is helping us, because the Albanian...
The issue is that completely, and the deal that the government has so far agreed with the Albanian government has meant that there are 70% fewer Albanian migrants coming over.
It's working.
But it's a bit of a Medusa's head. I mean, you solve that problem and you have a whole different group of people who are coming over.
That's government, that's politics, isn't it?
I wonder if actually Albania might have been a better partner in the first place than Rwanda.
Maybe.
You think about it. Because, you know, Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, has just done this deal with Albania in half the time we've been faffing around in the Supreme Court.
Like, how many times...
And they're in the European Union and the ECHR, and that's happening, you know, happy as Larry. So how come we can't just do the same? If we're sending them minibuses, let's send them, you know, illegal immigrants into containment centres.
Like, I think to myself, how many times do the Supreme Court have to say no until we actually think, like Suella's saying, even though I don't agree with Suella most of the time, that we need a plan B, and a plan B needs to be
she's only come up with that since she's kind of not there, though. She was all a very good idea while she was there. It wasn't her dream. It was her dream to send people to Rwanda. She's obviously woken up in a nightmare.
About that.
I haven't forgotten about it.
Changed her tune.
She has changed her tune.
Well, sweet dreams there, because it's not going to happen anytime soon. Stick with us. We need to go to the headlines. So